There we go. Hello, everyone. Richard Carlton. Welcome to the awesome day of FileMaker training. It is Friday, and I've already got messages from a couple of you who've already been popped the six-pack of adult beverages because it's what they always say. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 5 o'clock somewhere on the East Coast. So every day we're doing a live stream at this time slot. It's different. For me, it's 1 o'clock here in the Pacific time zone. Today we have a very exciting guest with us. So I'm going to pivot forward real quick. Margaret's here running the show, a broadcast engineer. She's helping us. I want to welcome Robert Holsey, who is here. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
I am doing well. Richard, thanks for having me back again.
Good, good. We are here to talk about Claris Studio, and very excited to hear that, talk about that. And Robert sharing his screen. And so the Claris Studio conversation today, from the high level before, so people don't get overly unhappy with me about it, is that we're picking up from 2 weeks ago. And Claris continues to work on this, and Robert is going to show us how to build from scratch a meaningful solution today. And that's very exciting because it's one thing to like have a slideshow. We're going to see a slideshow here briefly, just for a minute or two, a couple minutes. But really, at the end of the day, it's about us building something that's usable, that's functional, which is very exciting.
Cool. Thank you for that intro, Richard. So just again, a few slides here, just a level set. If you're not aware of me, my name is Robert Holsey. I'm a product manager here at Claris. I work today, on these days at least, on Studio. I was here a couple weeks ago. I incidentally, or accidentally, I should say, started a rumor that I was taking over as the primary person working on Studio. But I'm very excited to say that Bridget is still working very closely with me. So if you've interacted with Bridget in the past around getting started with Studio or getting guidance on Studio, Bridget is an awesome resource. But as we continue to build out Studio, there's enough here for both of us. I'm going to be focusing primarily on some of the new stuff, some of the stuff that you're going to be seeing here today, while Bridget focuses on the things that are in market currently and continuing to grow that around enablement and getting more people into the platform. So with that said, I just want to go through a real quick agenda. The point, as Richard said, is not to spend time in slides, but I do want to just make sure that we're all anchored. We're all starting from a sort of similar place. So we'll do a quick recap of my last session. I have a disclaimer, and then we'll get into the bulk of this, which will be live building. So again, we're here talking about Studio, and as I mentioned in the last session, Studio's focus is really about solving the external solutions portion of the problem that you may be facing when you look at your data at the center of your world. You've got the left-hand side of that graph showing the internal apps. FileMaker is still king at solving those types of problems. When you're talking about doing integrations, you've got Connect and, of course, the capabilities of FileMaker today, where Studio is really focused on those external solutions. If you were here last time, as Richard and I were talking about it, we described how WebDirect is still part of that equation. For some of the lighter work cases or use cases, rather, for external users, WebDirect is still a good use case there, or a good fit for that use case, where Studio is really coming in and trying to solve for problems that WebDirect cannot currently solve, whether it be for licensing or scalability issues, or even interactions. WebDirect is FileMaker in a web browser, where Studio is really built from the ground up to be a first-class web experience. So things like dynamically sizing, depending on device sizes, is something that's built into how we think about Studio. Today, as I mentioned in the last round, today we've got a couple of problems that we feel confident that Studio is capable of solving, and that's around data collection, as well as taking that data, doing some processing of that data, and then sharing it with folks that are outside of that core team. So the people that are living inside of FileMaker every day, FileMaker is still a great way to capture that data and share it with them. But maybe you've got people inside of your organization that don't use FileMaker every day that you want to share the results of the data that you've collected, maybe with an executive, and you can show the progress you've done. Studio is great for that. And I illustrated that we've got a series of views in market today aimed specifically at that type of problem. So you can use forms to do data collection. You've got spreadsheets to be able to process that data, and then a series of views that allow you to do some lightweight sort of project management. You take that data in, you process it, you do things like Kanban boards to maybe track progress. And then the data itself, while living in Studio, could then be accessed in FileMaker directly. And maybe that's all of the data, or depending on the processing that you've done on the Studio side, maybe a subset of that data. Future-wise, and this is really where the bulk of this conversation is going to be about, is solving for customer-facing web solutions. So external, your clients are coming in, they want to be able to view data. Maybe you've got a system that is exposing support tickets, as an example. So they want to see their previous support tickets, be able to provide updates on that. And you have that sort of bi-directional communication between the folks internally that are using FileMaker and then their external clients. And as mentioned last time, one of the ways or the primary vehicle in providing that kind of experience is leveraging our custom view. And just a couple of quick reminders here is that custom view is most similarly to what you would think of a layout mode in FileMaker, right? This is a canvas that you can come to and start assembling the custom view that you need. And that's why we're calling it custom view. Again, official name for this is to be determined. It's also designed for creation of dynamic web interfaces. And importantly, it leverages the I mentioned earlier, the spreadsheets, the Kanban views, the calendars, those views that we've created that are in market today. We've then taken those and made those into building blocks. So when you're creating your custom views, you're not starting everything from scratch. You can start taking those elements and combine them into the unique solution that you need. And in the last session, I walked you through actually a real world solution that we're building using Studio, reminding folks that the ETS system, that is our external testing. So if you are interested in any of the stuff that you're about to see me demo, and when you get hands-on with it, you want to be able to provide us feedback and give us guidance on what is important to you and what's not. Our ETS system is the mechanism in which we surface that, so that feedback loop with our customers. And we've actually built a solution in Studio that I want to walk you through today, and then actually go in and show you how I built it. One quick disclaimer, though, this is a work in progress. What you're about to see has some rough edges. These are things that we are in the process of building and refining, again, based off of the feedback from the folks that are in our ETS. So if you see something here that is valuable to you, that you want to be able to provide feedback for, or think you can start taking advantage of, at the end of this, I'll have a link to sign up for our ETS system, and we'll get you in so that you can start giving us feedback. Before I get into the build, though, do you have
The whole idea today, I think, and I'm going to frame this a little bit. So, Robert, you can get going there, show your screen. That's fine. So, the whole idea is that for those of you who don't know Robert, there's a handful of people at Claris, and I mean a handful, who live the lives that we have lived as developers. And they are the essential like keepers of the official knowledge at Claris. Robert's one of these people. He's done mostly in-house work. Some of you are in-house FileMaker developers. He's done that at Claris. He's done tech support. He's dealt with cranky customers. He's built solutions, public-facing solutions, internal solutions. So he has the background. And then he kind of laterally transferred from that part of the company into product management, where he brings his experience as a developer forward. I cannot say how important this is. I can't emphasize enough that when we interact with people as developers, we need people at Claris like Robert, who have done development. They understand it, because what you're about to see today is a training session on Studio, everyone. It's your first steps in Studio. You can, in fact, at some point you can get Studio, then watch the video and kind of play along if you want. I think it'd be super educational. I'm going to pretend that I'm you, and I'm going to ask the questions along the way to try to make sure that we're drawing parallels with FileMaker. Once again, I think initially with this tool is that it was so different that we're like, I don't even know where to start. But now Claris is embracing the fact that if we tie it to the idea of what FileMaker Pro is, or the FileMaker platform is, and its behaviors, and we say, well, it's like a custom view is like a layout, right? Now, I would yell at Claris and they would mute me, call it a layout, right? But they might call it something else. But the point is, at an educational level, we want to draw those comparisons so you don't feel like we just dropped you off in the middle of nowhere, right? You have references, landmarks, you know where we're going. So that's what we're going to be building today. I'm going to interrupt him. You ask questions, Margaret. If I miss something, you have a question that comes up, you can interrupt too. But he's going to be building. This is a real build. And he's also, because he's been a developer, he's been prepared to be in front of customers and do code changes live in front of them. You've had to do that. And some consultants, oh, it's such a bad idea. It's such a bad idea. You don't want to see the customer ever see you being awesome. I always think customers should see you being awesome. They can appreciate what you do. They'll appreciate the complexity of what you do. They'll appreciate you more, is my opinion. Doesn't mean you want to like choke on it, but you want to be able to have that confidence, ability to go forward. If this crashes today, it crashes, right? But this is where we're going. So I'm excited. So
I thank you for that, Richard. And the idea of doing a live demo of doing a building environment on an unreleased bit of software is walking a tightrope, but one that I'm excited for. So I appreciate that preamble there. So I just want to kind of level set. I got two screens here. One is the real production environment that we're running our ETS on today. And I'm just going show a couple of the key screens just so you sort of orient, and then we're going to switch over to a completely new instance of Studio, and we're going to build from scratch. So again, here is our real system. I've got some public views that are being shared. These are things like the ability to sign up. So at the end of this, you'll get a link that'll take you actually to this form. We've got the surveys for events like this. I've got the survey that I created for the last time I was here a couple of weeks ago, the results of that. And then I've got a series of what I'm referring to as sort of back office spreadsheets. So these are all the core tables that store all the information about things like our messages. So these are the notices that will show up on the home screen that I'm about to share with you, as well as all of the feedback and other bits of data that are coming in from customers. And then these are the core actual views that drive the experience for the end user. As I mentioned last time, we categorize these as hubs, and these are similar to the idea of an app in FileMaker. The reasoning, the thought process in not naming it exactly the same, though, is that these views, unlike layouts that are sort of trapped inside of an app, can easily be shared across views. And so you'll see instances where I've actually have the views shared here, and they're showing up in this public hub, but then I may also have them here broken up into separate hubs that are really focused on what I'm trying to accomplish. Another name that we're considering that we've gotten good feedback on are projects. The idea being that these are a focused set of views that are in one place for you to achieve a specific task. When my end users, the folks that are registered as part of the ETS program, when they log into Studio, they're only going to see this one hub that I've had shared with them. So when they come in, they're going to see this single hub, and they can go into the individual views. And here we've got sort of a home screen that shows them the messages from that spreadsheet I just showed earlier. We can collect feedback from them. I've got an event calendar so they can see upcoming events. There's content here. So as I do more of these types of videos and we want to share that and have one place for all our ETS members to see that, they'll be able to come here and access those views. And these are actually what I want to go in and try to build for you from scratch. So if I'm setting off trying to solve this problem, what are the steps that I've got to take? And then along the way, as Richard said, if there's questions that I can go into, let's do it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and kick it over to Margaret. Do we have any questions up front at all, Margaret?
So sorry, the hub essentially is a collection of views, aka layouts, which is shared to people or can be shared to people, but you have access to all of them essentially?
Yeah, so in this case, I am a team manager for Studio. So I'm going to see all of the hubs that are in the system. But as I invite other people, I can then specify, I close that window, let me bring that back up. Let's do one that doesn't show people. So here I can go in and add people by checking their checkbox, and they'll have then access to that particular hub. The eventual plan is to make that more granular. So you could have things like teams and put a bunch of people on a team and then share hubs with those teams so that you're not adding people individually. But that's the idea. So what I'll do then is drop into the, again, completely new blank environment. Typically, you'd have a sample hub that comes with a couple of views. I've gone ahead and deleted that just so that we're starting from a completely clean slate. The first thing that I'm going to want to go ahead and do, though, is we'll create a new ETS hub.
So a hub is an application, kind of that idea. Okay.
We can start from that simplicity. Again, the thing that makes it different in our mind is the fact that the views themselves are not trapped inside of that app. You can easily mix and match across hubs. And so it becomes a little bit more transient than what you would typically think of as an app, as like this bundle of things that can't move. But for this, you could say that I'm creating an ETS app as an example.
Okay.
And sorry, to be super explicit, I'm giving you our thought process. That's not to say don't challenge it. So if it's not making sense, then we've failed. So as people are hearing what I'm saying, understand that I'm talking through our thought process. But if it doesn't make sense, we ultimately want to hear that feedback.
And this is when I've been kind of climbing on top of these guys and yelling at them, going, "Hey, this doesn't make sense, right?" And so I would just simply say about apps is that, like a lot about what Studio is, it has great capabilities to extend and do things we don't normally do, but people are going to start this journey with some concrete ideas about what an app is. And if you want to educate them in flight, would be a good idea. I just me. I wouldn't want to hit them with too many new things brand new, right? So
Sure.
that's just me. But yeah, all right, cool. We're still going.
Awesome. So the first thing I'm doing here is we're going to go and create a new view. We'll select custom, and let's name this home. And typically, if I had other tables in this in Studio, I should say, they would show up here. But because this is our very first one, we'll just go ahead and create a new one. So what's going to happen here behind the scenes is not only is this view going to be created, but a table in Studio will be created as well. In our current iteration that you're seeing here, that table is abstracted, I guess. You're not going to see that as like a list of tables, but something that we're working on that will be in our ETS soon will actually be the ability to go in and drive and see all of your tables and what projects they're part or what hubs they're a part of, what views they're a part of. So understand at this point we're creating that behind the scenes for you, but a table does exist and we'll be interacting with it as you'll see in a moment. So here I've got my sort of blank canvas, as you were. So very similar to if you're creating a brand new blank layout in FileMaker. So the first thing I want to do, and there's a couple of approaches, just like FileMaker, right? Everyone has their own sort of methodology on how they're going to build something. Typically, when I was building this for the real solution, I went through and just created a bunch of spreadsheets first with all the fields that I wanted, and then I created the view, the custom view on top of that. But for the purposes of this, just to kind of get us started, start simple, I'm actually going to start in custom view, create some fields, show you how to get that basically wired up, and then we'll create a spreadsheet off of that we can go and create the rest of the fields and then put our layout together or our view together. So in order to do this, we've got a add objects pane. This is similar in FileMaker to your fields and the object tools that are along the top in the status toolbar, all in one place. Right now, this is broken up into table-based and UI. Some of the feedback we've gotten so far is that this is a little overwhelming to try to figure out which of these two tabs I need to be in to find the object that I want. So we're going to simplify this, have one list. You'll be able to search. It'll filter these down to the relevant elements. Here, though, I'm literally at a blank slate. So the only thing that really makes sense for me is to go in and create some new fields. Reminder, what I'm building right now is, let's bring up my other window for a moment. What I want to rebuild is this home screen, right? So there's a title, some welcome text, a list of messages, and then that list of messages, once selected, will show you the details of that message. And then there's a section for comments. And then there's if we just go and look at this in the sort of data entry mode, you can see it live, that when I select one of these things, it replaces the little message saying that, hey, go select a record. Let me do that again. So it says select a record, I select that record, and then it replaces that with the detail and the ability to have an extendable area for comments. So this is the first thing that we're going to go and try to build from scratch. All right, so let's first say we're going to have a message title and description. So let's just start with that. So we'll create a short text. Now, for this, I prefer to have the label and the field itself be vertical. So what I'm going to do here is go into the page settings. So take a moment here, or I should say view settings, just so we orient ourselves on sort of what the moving parts are, right? So I've got this thing that allows me to add objects. I've got the title of the view itself. We will come back to subview and that denotion when I build the next view as we build into a little bit more complexity. And then this gear gives me the view settings. So this is for the view itself. And what I want to do here is just specify object orientation so that any new object that I drag onto this will automatically have an orientation of the title and then the actual data entry. So for this, we will call it, I don't know, title. And then I'm going to add another object here to capture the description. Currently, we have two options that I could go with here. One is called long text and one is called rich text. The only real difference here is that with rich text, if I go into the data entry mode, when I click into this, I will see the options for rich text, basically. So adding paragraphs, doing links, and things of that nature. What we'll probably do realistically is remove long text and just have one text object here, and then just have that be a flag or something that you can toggle. But if you were wondering why we have two, that's the background. So this is going to be my details. So I've got my text and my details.
Let me ask a question. So if
Sure.
you look at these are two fields.
Yep.
The labels on the top and the field below.
Mhm.
Is that are we looking at the label right here, or are we looking at the field?
Okay, so you've got the label itself that shows up for the end user. So
Which
this
is-
is
yeah,
let me
yeah,
I've
yeah.
changed it. So let me refresh it. So
Okay.
that's called details.
Okay.
And then I've got the actual field. And just like FileMaker, you can go in and,
So that's the
your
placeholder
message.
text, right?
Yep.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. What you're seeing here, this rich text, that's actually the object name. So if I select this again, I can change this. So maybe I call this details as well. So just like in FileMaker, you
We
have
have
the
object
ability
names.
to put the object name.
Okay.
That's important, especially when you get into the some of the functions that you may be calling. Just like in FileMaker, you want to be able to specify a specific object name. We default it because we don't know what you're going to end up calling it to the object type, but you can go in here and change that. And so we'll do that here as well. Call it title. Okay, so at this point, like I mentioned in the last session, I've got my fields there. They exist in the table, but I can't actually do any sort of data entry yet. I need what we refer to as a data control. Now, in the last session, I talked a bit about something new that we're creating, which is the status toolbar. That's not in this build yet.
Oh,
It's coming. I got my first preview of it yesterday, and it's looking awesome. So maybe in the next session we can go in and show that off.
okay. Okay. Yeah. Because it looks like FileMaker.
It does.
As much as some of you hate the status toolbar, it looks like it, and then you have this familiar moment, Margaret.
Yeah. So we don't have that yet. And to be fair, in this particular case, I really wouldn't want it anyway. I would want the list of messages, but just so we continue that thread from last time. Okay, so what I've got now is a new list object, and it is pointed at the, I should have named my table, my custom table 2 here. We'll rename that in a moment. And I currently don't have any records on it. Let's go ahead and add the ability to edit records, which will give me also the ability to add and edit.
Okay, hang on. So we're editing the object on the left here right now, right? So we select that.
Mm-hmm.
We select this, and then we're editing the specifics over here, kind of like the inspector. Okay, got it.
Yep, exactly. And in this case, just in case because I went a little fast, you can see here, this is just a list of cards, basically. But by checking this checkbox, you'll see that we automatically add there a button that says add record. Okay. Now, Richard, you're going to have to bear with me for a moment because I got to do the part that, again, isn't we talked about last time, but isn't fixed in this current build, which is I've got to now specify the record ID that will populate these fields. So you're gonna bear with me for one moment. And the way that this is currently working, and again, we're going to simplify this, is I've got to tell it to point to this data control. This is where I do my dot notation. Hopefully you guys can see this. I can try to zoom in and see. But that's going to break the type ahead. All right, so we'll do this view. And then by doing a period, that gives me access to all the properties of that object. So here we've got 3 objects. We've got the details, the list, and the title. So I'll go down to list, or I could start typing. So here I want to do selected row, and then the record ID. Okay, so what this is doing is telling the view that it's going to get its record ID, so the current record to display from the selection of this list control.
Okay, I want to reiterate. So we haven't in this. Okay, move your mouse off.
Yep.
Okay, so you had selected this entire thing.
Correct.
Then these items here apply to that entire thing. I guess we do that in FileMaker sometimes,
exactly.
But yeah,
it's selecting the layout properties. One thing that, there is work that we want to do to make that more clear, because you also have the sort of view settings, which is the top level, and then you've got the more sort of drill down view settings. It will make a little bit more sense in later in this presentation when I go into getting into subviews, but there is some work we need to do here to make it clear. But like you said, it is similar in with FileMaker, where when you select the layouts or the blank layout, there's some properties specifically for that. Was there another question in there I thought I heard?
So this entire, I'm going to call it a layout.
Yes, it's let me help Claris here. Hang on, everyone. It's a layout. It's a layout. Okay, there we go.
This view/layout is calculating everything on it from the calculation that you just wrote. Because
What
when
it's
you were writing on it, I was in the impression that that title was being pulled from the other title.
Okay, so all this is doing is telling the view itself that the current selected record ID is being determined by the user selection. So when I click any one of these rows, which there's no data in here yet, so we'll see that in action in a moment, it is then telling the view that's the record ID that I'm going to display. So then any object, if I select one of these objects, you can see here that the record data is inherited in this case from the parent view.
Okay.
I could have done that calculation at each object level, and that's where as we were talking about last time, sort of the progressive reveal of where this becomes powerful is that decoupling of every object having to have the same context, like in the way it does in FileMaker's layouts. When you want to go and create something that within a view is pulling data from multiple sources, and maybe you have multiple lists that drive different records, you can then tell individual objects or a group of objects to go and get their record ID from a different place.
Okay, so you essentially applied a layout-wide context. Got it. Or
Yes, that's a good way to think about
context. So if you added another object onto here, would it automatically pick up the context?
It absolutely would. Yeah. So let me, because I don't remember all the fields that are on this. So let me look at my cheat sheet here. So, okay, yeah, let's say we add a new, actually, let me prove it to you first. Let's look at it in data entry mode. No, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. All right, so here's my first record. I should have said here's what is a view. Okay, layout. Okay, and then I can create another record here, and you can see now I can swap between these the way you would expect. So now that you see that wired up, if I go and add a new object, or a new field here, and we'll do a drop down. We'll put it next to it, and we'll call this one priority. And I don't know what are my options here.
Notice, Margaret, he put field name right there. So he's defining the name of the field, but also the label at the same time is what he's doing. You know?
Right. And then comparative to FileMaker, where you would then go separately and specify a value list, we're doing that directly in line to this object.
Yeah.
Now, you still have the ability, and again, in my case, I don't have any other tables to choose from other than this current table, but you could choose to have your values coming from a different table, and then you can choose to filter those based on some criteria. So it gets into those more dynamic, the ability to create dynamic value lists, where if you were doing that in FileMaker, think about the relationship graph you'd have to create for that.
Yep.
Appreciate the claps.
No, I'm clapping. It's good.
Okay, so what was I doing here? So here, I lost my, okay, so let's do important.
Picking a value list, essentially.
Yeah, and reminder. Okay, so there's my drop down. So now if I come over here and refresh this, so I select this first one, and now I can specify the priority. So any new object that I add here, it understands the context and is added to that record.
Okay, that makes sense.
So real quick, what I'm trying to do with these folks, if you drop, yeah, there we go, drop me back there. The training with this from my end is this, what we're doing right now should be like the second lesson, or this, if you were doing a 2-hour training, it would be the second hour training, because the idea that this is a layout and all the objects in here can be connected to different tables, right? And that is such a big concept for FileMaker developers. You know, it's not something I want to hit them with initially, like right out of the gate. And that's what they're. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct. But understand that conversation for a new FileMaker person. That's a conversation. So it's a situation where what I'm trying to do with these folks here at Claris, these folks, I'm down here at Claris right now, is get them to the point where it's Robert's word, I'm going to steal from him, his progressive reveal. So it starts off like this whole layout just belongs to the table and the objects belong to that. And then as we get comfortable with that, because we've seen it before, then Robert goes, well, this is so good, but couldn't it be better? And look at this amazing new additional widget capability we have where it can go everywhere, right? It's just what I'm trying to do is the progressive reveal is the ultimate best definition of training. And it's what I'm trying to remind them of, because we do all the training with you folks. I know when I overdo it and what happens, it gets really quiet on the live stream, really quiet, which means everyone's drunk because it's Friday, or they're trying to follow and they're afraid to ask a question because they don't want to look stupid, but they're all lost. So
We have two questions from the audience. It's not
Sure.
just me floundering and Robert explaining things to me. So can you create a text where that shows the record number? So, oh, you want to see the record ID, like the ID field on FileMaker? Yeah.
Yeah, so the way that I would do that is, all right, so we've got text blocks, and part of this you could do just a normal text, but you could also get into our calculation. So what would it be? Can I get?
it's an LCO, layout based calculation.
No.
LCO.
No, hold on.
No pressure, Robert.
Oh, hold on. I know that there's a way to do this, whether I remember how to do it offhand. Well, I guess I could just do, yeah, hold on. This
Call the get function for the record ID or whatever you have for that.
list
There you
it would just be this because it's the record. It's the same thing that I'm putting to the thing. I don't know why that took me a moment.
Oh, okay.
That should give me then. Oh no, of course it didn't. Oh wait, no, I'm gonna select it. Yeah, there you go. It then gives me the record ID.
Nifty. Okay.
So-
that also helps for
So,
visualization.
Margaret, that's a get function, right? So he did a
Well,
get
that
function.
wasn't a get function. It's more like a when you select a field in FileMaker and it auto fills like the table chunk at the beginning and then it tells you the field part at the end, right? I don't know what you call that. Is there a specific name for that? Or it's like you're in TO6 contacts and you've got the contact ID set for the information in that field.
Yes. That's kind of the idea. So instead of so these are all his what they call dot notation.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say we do have some get functions, though not the end list, right? So this is why this kind of feedback is so valuable. I think in this particular case, it makes the most sense to do what I had done there. But as we're thinking about this, just like we did with FileMaker, where we abstracted the complexity of a lot of these kinds of things, we'd want to understand what are those common, the common cases that we could then simplify through functions. But anyway, so it's not that we've completely gotten away from get functions. It's just a slightly different way of getting at that data.
No, that makes sense. Get functions are just reassuring.
Yeah.
Okay. You might want to write that down. That was a big statement, what she just said right there. Get functions are reassuring. It's not so much that the get function, she recognized something from a previous life, and that was reassuring.
Yeah, no, she's on a roll with quotes that we're going to be stealing. She had a go in last event too. So love it.
We have a question from Francesca before I let you go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it. No, go for it.
Dragging it back. Francesco, after some tests, it seems to me that Studio is not made for having more users working at the same moment. And table view data is updated only by refreshing the page. Am I wrong? This seems a limitation.
So I want to separate two pieces there. So there is the notion of doing live development altogether. I don't know that I would say that Studio has challenge. I mean, there's challenges even in the FileMaker world trying to do two people working on the same layout, and we block that. So that's one piece of the equation that I'll say, as we're starting this platform off, hasn't been like a key focus where we try to think about all the challenges that would come into developers all working on the same, let's say, view at the same time. But the second part of what you're describing of as data is coming in, not seeing that data refreshed live, which is, a staple of FileMaker. I think of every demo I've ever done of FileMaker. That's one of the things we show is here's a bunch of windows or here's FileMaker and Go, and seeing that record data come in automatically. That is something that we are working on, though. I don't have it in this build, but I mentioned earlier we have the ability to drill into like the table view, and part of that is seeing the live data or seeing the data of that table. And we've done our first implementation of what you're describing, where as new records come in, it'll automatically show up in that table. So we still have some more work to do to now populate that through all the views, but that's the intent. We see the value there. So you'll see today, and some of the demos that I'm doing, I do have to refresh the page, but that's a point in time, not a hard limitation of the technology. It's just we haven't gotten that far yet.
Just keep in mind for most everyone is that as we do development, one of the things we talk about training is that having live pushes can come with performance hits for that. And so we don't always, even though we could do it in FileMaker, sometimes we go out of our way to kind of suppress the live pushes to the clients because it can if you have 100, 200 people and they're all getting live pushes, sometimes that could be overwhelming, or a summary field wants to calculate. Sometimes we ask the user to push a button if they want to see updated data. That way it's not automatically forced down their throats, if that makes sense, right? So having it be a selective thing is a good idea. And clearly within let's understand that in the world of SQL and Oracle and all these other systems, by default, they operate this way. FileMaker, why we all use it is because it operates differently and it's awesome. But sometimes the awesome, with great power comes great responsibility, that whole conversation. Just because it runs updates on your summary fields all the time automatically, that may not be a good thing. So it's part of the ongoing conversation.
Okay, so what I want to do now is instead of creating all of these fields through here, which I could do, my ultimate view isn't going to include a lot of this stuff. It's sort of more back office things. So what I want to do is create a new view, and we'll do a spreadsheet this time. We'll do, I don't know, back office. And then the table, we'll choose the table that we're currently looking at. So what that will give me is a spreadsheet now that has all of those same tables. And I'll actually rename this to messages. So here I'm actually renaming the table itself behind the scenes. Okay, so we've got, what do we have so far? We've got our title, or our details. This drop down is supposed to be the status. One thing that we need to surface in the custom view that we haven't yet, but is important to understand that you do have this capability, is that the drop down itself will show. Oh, it's not in this. It's in the list in the spreadsheet view. You'll see it in a moment. The options with sort of color coding. This is also important for, and I'll show an example of this later when we do dashboards. When you see values coming for, or when you're doing like a pie chart and it's showing the values. Those colors are coming from here. So you can actually go in here and change, like, I think red probably makes sense for important, and maybe for reminder, we do something that's just kind of gray. So just so you're aware that that is something that you can go in and change, that will reflect in the value of the dropdowns that we'll see in a moment. Obviously, you can also then rearrange these as well. So there's our status. We also want to add the ability for folks to add comments. So if you haven't seen comments in Studio, it really does the idea is that it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So it handles the series of comments coming in, has a UI already built, which we'll see in a moment, and then some special logic so that someone adds a comment, they can delete it for a bit, and then after a while that option goes away, at least through the front end interface. You can always go in as an administrator and clean things up if you need to, but that sort of typical comment interactions, that's all built in. And then we'll go in and add created on and modified on. And my main reason of adding these isn't so much that I actually need to interact with them right now, but you saw me create a record earlier, and I want you to understand that unlike FileMaker, we have to create those fields if we don't include it as one of the built-in fields, like in our default records or the default field set. These are really just exposing data that we're capturing. So if I refresh this, you'll see that record data that I had created earlier when we were in the custom view is actually in here, and it did record those 2 bits of information. And here you can see now the status colors that I was describing earlier, and then here's the interface for comments. So it's cool. And so you can see here I can do things like edit, delete. I can like this.
That's a lot of pre-built functionality right there.
Yep.
That's nice. I like that.
Was there a question there?
No, I was just surprised. So it's like the fields are constantly existing, even if you don't have them on the view.
For the things like created on, modified by, those kinds of things, that's data that we're capturing as part of the record. So if you didn't include the create on right from the beginning, that data is not lost. You don't have to start from the point in which you've started, that you've added that field. Of course, these other ones, they don't exist yet, so they don't exist. But for things like, again, I can add created by, and I'll have the information about the fact that my user created this record.
That's extremely nifty. How cool.
Sweet. I think so too, because I've definitely been in situations where, like, crap, I forgot to add that, created on, or I wanted to see the history.
Yesterday.
Good. Okay, so there we go. Solving problems. All right, so now we've got the sort of underlying structure set up. Let's go in and start really setting this view up the way that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these objects because I don't want them the way that they currently are. We can leave this. We'll just move it down for a moment. One thing I want to call out that I mentioned earlier, rough edges. This is one that we are working on, which is the way that you see objects being laid out in the grid and the behaviors of that. So I'll point that out as we go, but if you're seeing things jump around in ways that you're not expecting, known issue that we're working through. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, let's bring up my other screen for a moment so that you can see what this is supposed to look like. Okay, so we want a title. We've got some horizontal lines, doing some emojis and some text, and then we've got our selection down here. So the first thing I want is a text block. And we'll put that up towards the top. We'll call this spell Claris correctly, ETS. And we'll do a heading 1. Let's go ahead and make it bold. Cool. And then we will do a line and draw this out. Now, in the actual thing, it was a pretty straightforward standard line, but there are some things here. So I could go in here and make it dashed. I could make it larger. I can change colors. So in here, we'll do a custom color and make it, I don't know, let's do green. Okay. Not that highlighter green. Let's do that green.
Okay.
So you've got some, you've got some ability to sort of stylize this the way that you want. Let's go and add another text block, and this will act as our welcome area. So let's do welcome. I know this on macOS. I don't know if there's an equivalent on Windows, but Control Command Space will bring up the keyboard's emoji library.
Really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that till recently as well. So sharing the love. But we'll do a little welcome.
Hey, it works. How about that? Okay.
I'd never lie to you, Richard. Part of this was showing the username here. So this was actually a little spoiled earlier, but we'll do it again, where I can inline add a function. So we'll do the get.
Yeah, give me some get
username. So this will give me, it'll introduce itself to the person signed in. So again, this is my, based off of my account. I'm logged into this. This is how I was entered into the system. So that's what that's pulling from. I don't remember what I typed here, but
But if it's anonymous, then it would be nothing, right?
If you had an anonymous, so it gives you a, I think we refer to that as a system account. I can't remember what exactly it'll show. But in this kind of use case, right. I can't think of an intersection where you would want to welcome them but not know their name, even if it was anonymous. I guess the only case there would be, you could have a scenario where you wanted to send them a personalized URL. So maybe the parameter of the URL has that information. So there might be other ways.
Because some of these are designed to be public-facing forms, but if someone's coming in here for the first time, so you're seeing this as a ETS submission for someone that you already know and they logged in, is what you're saying. Not like a bug out of the blue, and we've never heard of Fred Williams, and Fred Williams comes in here.
Correct. So the way that this works is they sign up first. Then
they get this. Got it. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. This is super awesome, whatever. And then what else did I have in here? Oh, okay. So I can just actually copy this.
Yeah, I just steal that stuff.
Yeah, let's cheat a little bit here.
Cheat a lot.
So a couple of things here that you can see is we've got like different size headers for this. These are actual links so that these will work. Let's go to reload this for a moment. Maybe I didn't click out of it. There we go. Let's resize this. I'm not going to click on my email just because I don't know if it'll open my whole email client live on stream.
Yeah.
But what it normally does would bring up just the new message dialog. But this other one you can see takes you as a link to the Claris login. So just little things that you'd expect for being able to interact with your user. Okay, so then we've got another line separator, and I'm just going to leave this one. We already looked at styling, but you can imagine I guess it's just, actually I do want to show one other thing. When I specify custom color, we're saving all the colors that you chose. So as I was moving around and looking at the different greens that I liked, my most recent one is the same green. So quick way to just kind of stylize
You could duplicate the object, right?
Do I have that in this build? I don't think I. Oh, I do. I do have it in this build. So yes, I could have duplicated it as well.
Okay, sorry. I'm just being lazy. I'm like, hey, got a line, duplicate it.
I was doing it because I wanted to show that cool feature there.
Okay,
No,
got it.
I had honestly forgotten the duplicate option, but yes, that is another approach. So I'm glad you raised it. All right, and then we'll do one last text block here. And what did I call it here? Yeah, messages from Claris. And boom, we got that. Cool. All right, so we've got the core shell of this. The next bit, though, is this group and this behavior of showing the different objects depending on whether there is a record selected.
By the way, we might go late. I don't have a hard stop. We can keep going, right? You have a hard stop?
I don't have a hard stop here.
This is he's got some really cool stuff here on the end of this, so we're probably going to keep motoring here for a little bit, everyone. So just keep that in mind.
Cool. Yeah, we should be pretty close to finishing up this layout, this view.
Yeah, but I want to see the cool stuff with connect at the end.
Okay. I'll make sure that that's included. So let's go ahead and recreate this section. So what's going on here is I've got a group, and that's giving me some ability to style the background, right? So let's start there. So we'll add a group object and line that up.
So they create the group first, Margaret, kind of like a slide control idea, where then we apply things to it.
There is the ability to go from an object. So I could say, hey, I want to create a group from this object.
Okay.
One thing that's not implemented currently is multi-select, which is something that we need to work on.
Okay.
But the idea would you be able to go the other way as well. But in this case, because I want to throw some objects into it, makes sense to start with the group.
Okay.
We'll do a little bit of styling here. A callback to earlier, though, when I was saying you could have fields pulling from different data sources. The group is one way that you could facilitate that. You can see here the record data is inheriting again from the parent, and that'll pass its way all the way down to objects that I place on it. But I could at this point, have a separate group that is now getting its own getting its records from some other source. So just as an example of how you could start divvying up your view. So I want to style this. We'll do a solid line background. Let's choose another custom color here. That's the line color. Actually, let me do default here. Let's not do line color. Let's do here it is, the curvature of the object itself, and then I missed it. It's up here, the background color. So this will choose as, let's do blue, but let's bring the opacity way down so it doesn't look so aggressive. All right, so now I've got a group that I can start throwing objects in. Now I could do where am I at here? I could just add the title and make this read only if I wanted. I selected the wrong thing. I could make this read only, meaning that when I refresh this, I have the title here, but then it kind of looks like a data entry that I can't really enter anything into. So what I chose to do instead is our trick of using a text block and a variable. So we'll bring in that text block again, and we will add a function here that is this table. This table dot. I want the title value. Nope. Done. Submit, and then I can make this header 1. Let's see. Tap out of that so we can refresh. And it gives me the same thing. So that gives me a little bit more styling capabilities here, and it doesn't look like some data, like a data entry field. One bit of work that we do know we want to do is make it so that the area can expand depending on the content inside of it. Right now, like FileMaker, I do need to have an object size to fit the description, but that's something that we'll be working on. The next piece here is I want to add another group because I want to add comment section for folks to give me feedback on my messages. And the key difference here I want to call out is this: we can show a title, so we can call this comments, and then we can also allow for collapsing and expanding. So maybe I don't want the comment section to be sort of in your face and always there, but I do want people to be able to easily get to it. So we'll go ahead and grab that. And
so we'll use your pre-built comments
Mhm.
block. Okay.
Yep. And I just drag that in here. And, we could do a different background color for this.
See, that's a pre-built, like a widget or a whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And I love that. It's for
Cool.
basic in-house applications, I think it's really useful.
Yeah, agreed. And that was why first we started with these sort of more rigid built-in views, but then now we can have those as building block objects.
Yeah.
The way that this works is if I minimize this and then I refresh the page here, that'll tell it what its default state is. So now you can see that I've got the ability to expand and collapse this.
So whatever the state is at the time you save it in layout mode, and then you switch to browse mode, then it takes that state. Okay.
That's how it is today. Honestly, I think that needs to be more explicit because I've definitely been doing development and forgot to put it back. But for people understanding how it works today, that's how it works.
Yeah, some sort of default config. Yeah.
Yep. All right. And then we're going to do one more group because one of the magical parts of groups is that they do take up the space when other objects are removed. That's part of their sort of built-in logic. So now what I can do here is put another group down at the bottom, and we're going to make this maybe not that obnoxiously red, but red because it's an alert message, and we'll drop in another text object, and we'll do our click here, first message. This could say anything, but we'll just try to get this. Come on. Resize. Yeah. This is one of the other pieces that we're working on is consistently placing where the resize and drag and drop is. So that's another thing that we're working on. One of those sort of rough edges, but I think will go a long way in sort of the experience. Okay, so right now what's going to happen is that this is going to always show up at the bottom, which is not what we want. Of course, we want to only show that if there's no record selected. So what I'm going to do here is come into the automation tab, and there's this option for visibility. And we're going to do is blank, which is similar to is empty. Is blank is a very common in other platforms mechanism. And so there's been some internal conversations about, being different there versus being different in FileMaker. Understand that is a conversation that we're having. But is blank is very similar. So I want to know is the selection. So for this view, list.
The selected row is blank,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Then...
So in this case, actually, this is going to show the object when. So I don't want to show it. Oh, I don't want this to show up, or I don't want this to be when this is not true. Sorry, when this is not blank, I want this object to show. So I'm just copying that. I'm going to do the same thing.
Oh, the exclamation point at the front means the inverse?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So is not blank basically is what is being said there.
Okay.
And then for this one, I do want this only to show when it is blank. So we'll paste that in. And hopefully,
Mark, does that make sense? What's happening here? There's equivalence in FileMaker, but what's not really equivalent.
That's not is empty.
Not as empty, and all that. But what happened here is that all this stuff that was gone, this piece was way the hell down off the bottom of the screen, and it.
Oh, I didn't quite process that until you pointed that out.
Yeah, that's the cool part about this web interface. I mean, it's got some issues that makes me want to scream, but the flexible nature that it auto flows is really huge.
Right. And so now if I select this, that goes away, and I have my two other objects. I didn't add the description, but obviously the description could be there as well.
Could you put two overlapping groups on top of each other, like in FileMaker Pro, and have show one and hide one? I mean, they're below, one's above and below, and they're sliding up.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that in FileMaker, so we would put two on top of each other.
So no, you cannot currently, but I don't want to solve that problem the same way we did in FileMaker because that's sort of a pain to start stacking a bunch of objects and deal with the layout objects.
I agree. I'm agreeing. It's one of those things like we would just have to translate that for people in the training, right? So yeah.
Yes, and thinking a little bit further out, when we start talking about dynamically sizing based on different device sizes, Right now, it basically just stacks. Like if I shrink this down to a phone, it stacks all the objects.
Mm.
But there's cases where you don't actually want that. You may want to swap out some objects for a different object that is more tuned to an iPhone, as an example.
Ooh, so
So those are the kinds of things that we want to are technically kind of doable here, but we need to make a lot simpler.
yeah, what do they call that? I'm spacing on the name
I'm
of
spacing on the name too.
the reaction reactive design. What's it?
Responsive design.
Responsive.
Yeah.
There we go. Responsive.
We
design.
got there.
Okay. We're both thinking the same thing. God, what was that word?
Yeah.
All right, Margaret, questions. This is pretty, hopefully people, is anyone, hey, Robert needs to know if anyone cares about this. And I'm not being flip. He needs to know that anyone there's watching this and are you learning anything? Is this useful for you? Clearly it shows you where Claris is going, which they're listing, which is great. And they're making it like logical, but does anyone care? Margaret, can you?
I
Like,
mean, I care. I don't know if I count though because
yeah,
I'm
but
a
you don't
girl.
count. You're like my daughter. You count. I don't count. You don't, which means you don't count.
You
So-
count for me. I'll tell you that.
Beverly gives you hearts, Robert. So
Whoa, Beverly Voth is here. Hey, Bev.
Stu has a question.
Go, Stu.
Does the hide/show use the CSS display :none, or does it not send to the HTML?
I don't know that answer, but that's a great question that I can verify with the engineering team. I'm not sure though which approach we're handling there. I'd be curious of the level of detail why that's interesting. I can kind of guess, but I'd rather not guess.
Yeah. So why are you basically why are you asking, Stu? We support the question, but why are you asking?
The details, yeah, the details are important because if I don't want to just say, hey, we're doing it this way, and then if there's some reasoning, logic reason behind why we need to be able to do it one way or the other, maybe because you don't want that data to ever even get to the client, that kind of stuff would be interesting. Real quick, because I have no problem keep going, and I do want to show a couple more things, but in just in the interest of time, if people need to drop, I did want to share two things real quick, which is this link will take you to the ETS sign up. So if you wanted to get your hands on this, dive into it a little bit more deeply. And if you happen to be watching the recordings, these will still be up. So if you want to go and look at this or still sign up for this. And then a different survey from last time, but another survey form that gets into what you saw here today, what is exciting to you, what you feel like is missing. It really is really helpful to have folks fill this out. In there, you'll see I make a joke that like even things that seem negative are very helpful to us. I hope that you're hearing from me not, hey, this is the way we're doing it, it's this way or the highway kind of thing. I'm trying to talk through our process, our thought process, why we're making the decisions we're making, so that you can then say, well, that's the wrong decision for XYZ reason, and that's incredibly helpful. So please do fill these out, and then with that, I'll jump back into doing some development for a bit.
Yeah, let me just dovetail on what he said here. This is a survey. Please fill this out. If you are so the spreadsheet thing, we kind of drove around it, and I was waiting for someone to ask the question, and no one really did. I'm assuming because they were afraid to ask the question. But if you have a question you didn't ask, please write it up and ask the question, because if you ask the question, that either means that me and Robert didn't present it well, or there's an issue with the strategy within the Claris and the product. And it could be just us that me and Robert suck, but with this product specifically, there are enough rough edges that if you have a question, you don't understand, like, why is the spreadsheet where it is? And Margaret said, where's Command Shift D? And I just kind of let that one go. But some of you understand that, some of you don't. If you don't understand kind of how and why, please ask, because that's how it informs Claris. Because Claris figured out that they want you on the show to use Studio, which means they have to listen to you. Okay, which means that you need to give them feedback when you're confused, and then they'll make it better. Does that make sense? I'm saying the same thing Robert did, but more dramatically with hand waving.
Okay, I want to go a little bit further here and show a couple of other things that can be precursors. As I mentioned last round, I do want to get into some cadence here where we're coming in and we're just doing some development, having these kind of conversations. So I'll do this as a little bit of a tease for some stuff that we can go into more detail on the next session. So in this case, I created a view, a single view, and placed all the objects on it. But let's say that I want to create, where's my go back over here for a moment, where I want to be able to create a view like this, where I've got a list control on the left, and then similar kind of setup. There is actually another way that we're experimenting with being able to construct something like this that gives you even more sort of a dynamic a UI that you can control. So let me create a new view and kind of go into that in a little bit more detail. What I'm about to go into, though, is sort of even further out. It is all functional, but there's even more rough edges. And the reason I want to raise this is to get sort of a sense of, is this super valuable to you? Do you think this is something that we should be prioritizing high on our backlog? That kind of feedback is what I'm looking for. Go for it.
Robert needs, so as he's doing this next gee whiz thing, which I haven't seen it yet, he needs feedback. So on the RCC survey, that way they would put that on the survey form if they could do that.
Let's do. I'm trying to see if I can shortcut this a little bit. Let's do an import. So I'm going to create a new spreadsheet from some sample data. And instead of doing feedback, we'll do the use cases since happen to have that here. Actually, I can get to show this off in this build. This is the new import dialog. If you've used Studio before, we had a very simplified UI dialog, but this one is now starting to match much more closely with what you expect in FileMaker. So cool. Didn't intend to show this.
I don't feel instantly alienated. That's good. Okay, yeah, it makes sense, Margaret, because then you have your source, and then there's some options here that aren't in here yet, but I get all that. And then whether you import them or don't, and then you move them up. Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, good, Robert.
So credit to the engineering team and design team, and I'm glad that I happened to come across this. The thing about options not all being here, it's similar to FileMaker in that I'm creating a brand new table in this case. So just like in FileMaker's import dialog, some of that stuff is removed, and here you can see it's actually giving me the new table name or spreadsheet name that we'll do. We'll just call this use cases. So we'll go ahead and import that. Little bug that I'm noticing here, but
I thought that was a new super style.
Oh, it was then. It was.
That was a bug. Styled. Okay, that was kind of like your art department was rethinking what progress dialogues are. Okay.
So I've got some data in here. I realized that I have some extra columns, but that's fine. It's okay for what I want to show here. That's not a big deal. So let's do another new view. We'll do custom, and here we'll do use cases. Use case, yeah. And we'll pick that same table. Okay, so this is the part that I'm treading into some new territory around. So we're going to go back to the pages detail. And instead of a single frame, I'm going to split this up and we'll do a header left and right. So what this just did was broke this view, this use case view, into 3 separate subviews. And they behave the same as when you have just a single view. So I can come in here and I can add an object like a text block that is called Claris ETS, just like we did before. That nice big. And that'll be our header. And I can size this up and lock it. So now the user won't be able to change the size of that. That'll be my header. I'm sure that there's people thinking already about sort of the concept of nested layouts and the idea of being able to reuse this header across views. This is the stepping stone to be able to get to that world. So right now, this is a subview inside of this use cases view. So then we'll create something where we've got our list control. And we'll add that here. Oh, I could have made it a little bit bigger. So this part of it is very similar to what we were just doing, where I have that pointed to use cases. Cool. And then for this frame, I want to tell it to inherit its records. Here, I'm going to choose the subview, which is, so I haven't renamed this. This is called subview because that's the name of this object here. So just like we did before, though, I've got my lists, my selected row, and my record ID. So now, anytime I add a series of fields here, so use case, acceptance criteria, oops, do that. here's the grid behavior I was talking about, needing to improve a little bit, but here's the title of the use case. Here's the acceptance criteria. Let's add, I don't know, status. We'll add status too. The main point here is not to look pretty. It's just to show you functionally how this works. So what's cool about this now is this gives me a resizable object. This is where things start getting really interesting to me. And I'm again showing this so that you can see sort of the progression of how we're layering these complexities on top of it. And because this one's a little bit further out, starting to think about how important this is to folks and where you're seeing rough edges around it. Let me show another example. Would be a good way. Maybe let's get rid of this and let's do, maybe I want to look at this as a Kanban view.
Yeah, Kanbans sometimes are never big enough, right? So
right. So what you'll notice here is that one thing I want to call out here and some of the things that logic, what's going on behind Studio, is you'll notice that I added this Kanban view and it's already pre-populated because it made a decision on sort of what to base the grouping off of because I already have a status field. And so that's why I'm getting out of the box, simply dragging it on there, didn't do any configuration. It's showing me build proof of concept because that's where all of my data is. And then I can customize this. So maybe I want to have larger cards so I can see a little bit of the description. I could get rid of the not categorized. That doesn't help me a whole lot here. Okay, so now that I've got that configured in a way that I want, I'm going to resize these a little bit so that they're still readable. Actually, let's just get rid of that for now. I don't need it. And then the other thing I'll need to do is I do have an error here in my function because I got rid of that list. So we'll do this again and just do now the Kanban. Selected item, record ID. Okay, so that will give me something similar. So when I select a thing, I get the details of it here. But to your point, maybe I need more real estate. What I can do is change the properties of this pane so that it can close and actually starts off closed.
Oh.
What that means, though, is I do have an extra step on my Kanban view to say, okay, on event on an item being selected, I'm going to show frame. And the frame I'm going to do is subview 1. Or no, actually, no, I'm sorry. Show frame, and it's right pane. That's right. So it's the pane, not the object. Okay,
Right
so now
pane.
I'm showing that right pane. So if I've done everything correctly, when I reload.
So that's a command, a script step command, essentially, Margaret, to tell it to display something, which is something we don't really have right now.
No.
In a
Pretty
direct
cool
way like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, actually, sorry, I want to make one other change. I'm going to make this so that the height will fill the space of out.
Sure.
So now when I resize or when I
So it starts off big and then you select it, it's going to tell it to show the right pane to display it.
And then
Because
these
by
are
default in the automation on the inspector let me help you, it's an inspector. The inspector on the right side has a check that say start off by being hidden or whatever it said.
This is extremely cool.
It is very cool, and they're listening, which I'm really excited about, right? And they're making this so I want to use it. I'm feeling, Margaret, go.
Beverly is throwing you a party, in case you're wondering, Robert. So.
I can't stress enough that the teams that have been working on this have been awesome. Wes and Bridget, as folks that have been interfacing with you guys. This is all based on feedback. This is all based off of the challenges that we know we have faced in the FileMaker side when you're trying to build these kinds of more complex views. And so as we're trying to solve these problems, we're carrying that stuff forward. And as mentioned, like this is the precursor to the place where we want to get so that, okay, I don't have to recreate this header 50 times. I can create the header and reuse that view across, or that subview across different views.
Well, it's like you create a navigation system and then it just stays for all the other layouts.
Right.
It's very
so
cool.
again, we're not there yet. This is a stepping stone to this, but it's early. And again, this is stuff that we really want to get some feedback on, and both in the sense of how valuable it is to you, but also sort of the, smoothing out some of the rough edges and making sure that we expose it in a way that makes sense.
And so to submit that, once again, I'm going to keep beating on this, but to submit that RCC survey, Margaret, make sure that you, yeah, here it is. I guess you use your phone to bring this up, or
Yeah, you can just do
I've
a
also
QR
posted
code.
links for
Oh,
people.
beautiful. Thank you.
please submit those, because here's the deal. If no one submits any questions or ideas or anything or feedback on this, Robert's going to think none of you care. I mean, Claris is really big on that. They're big on, they don't go with their gut a lot. A lot of times they want telemetry, real data to backstop decisions they want to make. Like, if I do this, will this bring us more customers? If I do this, will people be engaged? If Robert does the show and shows this to you, do any of you care? And if you care, how do you care? And what do you think about this auto flow and what we're doing here? Right? Very, very important.
So I want to leave with one last thing as sort of a preview of something that we could dig into as a future event. So I'm going to go back to the real system for a moment. So just to make sure we're all on the same page as far as the problem I'm trying to solve here. So I've got a series of customers that are giving us ETS feedback. They're doing that through these various views that I've got, right? So they may be coming in and making a comment on one of the messages that I have in the home screen, or they could be creating new bugs or feedback, or submitting new use cases, or feedback on events. All of those things are happening in all these different views. All these different views have different tables that are underlining them. And so what I want to make sure that I'm able to do as someone that is managing those interactions is that I can see when anytime a new record is added, or in certain cases even updated. Maybe you've submitted a use case and you've updated the status of it to proof of concept to being in development. And so those are all things that I need to track. And so what I've done is I've set up an actions needed table in Studio. And I'm using, actually I should have opened up Connect here. I've got a series of Connect flows that are using our new, currently in ETS, but hopefully to get this out here soon, Studio connectors. So whenever a new record is added on a specific table, or a record is updated, or even a specific field within a record is updated, I have actions that are basically creating for me a log here of all of those, whatever those actions may be. And you can see here, this is mostly me doing tests. But what this has then allowed me to do is not only capture all those, and now I can come in here and say, oh, well, I've looked at this one, no action was needed, so it goes down the list. So this gives me sort of a backlog of all the things that I need to be paying attention to.
So Margaret, here you go. This is awesome. I'm very excited, but I got to slow him down. He's going warp 9. So could you go back to the submit form where we would submit a form? Okay. Submit, or as the new window, maybe you could pop that and then pop the other one back if you want. Can you show me both? The log and then the submit form.
Let me do this one.
Okay, so there's this one here.
Let's do a new window.
Because initially this doesn't make sense. Okay, so you got this. Then you have, yeah, that's fine. Okay, now go back to the log. Okay, so normally, all right, so if you were over here, Margaret, and this was a data entry screen over here, then this is a form view and this is a list view. And when I first saw this about an hour and a half ago, I'm like, okay, Robert, dude, that's just a different kind of view on the same data. No. What this is this form, and he has another form somewhere else, and another form somewhere else, and another form somewhere else. And there is a trigger with their Connect software that grabs the content here and grabs from here and grabs from here and grabs from here. And based upon whatever you like, if it's Beverly Vaught, then it's 5 stars. Then what we do is we're going to come over here and write a record over here, right? But if it's Richard Carlton, I'm complaining that Claris management's lost its mind for some reason. They're going to well, don't do that. We're not going to bring that over here. Get rid of Richard. Get rid of the evidence, right? That kind of thing, right? So the idea is that he's got multiple data tables of material, and this is essentially another table of essential items. You call it a log or whatever you want, but the Connect it sees a new record over here, it evaluates the record for what it is, then it basically does go to this other table, create a new, Margaret, write the script in your head. We always talk about, right? Create new record, and then start populating probably from variables or something, however you captured the data over here. Come over here, when I tell people train, I say copy paste.
Mhm.
Then professional developers like Beverly yell at me, and I said, yes, it's an analogy. We don't use copy paste anymore. But you get the idea. That's what he just showed. And then you go, holy that was cool.
And that's why what I would like to do is in a follow-up session, especially as we're getting close with the release of the connectors, similar to what I just did as far as building the views, maybe we show something like this where we can go and build the connect flows and then show them populating a log table. And then just the last piece of this is because I've got a dashboard built on top of that view, I can at a glance then start seeing here's all the data that's coming in. And while I do need to do a refresh window, if it was some new record came in while I was sitting here, this gives me every morning I can come in and see, okay, here's the interactions. Here's something that I need to go and pay attention to or follow up on.
This is really cool. But he's not going to come back on the show unless some of you have to upvote this. Do you want him back in 2 weeks? We come back in 2 weeks?
I think so. We'll look at the exact timing, but I want to get to a cadence where it's every 2 to 3 weeks.
We'll talk.
So we'll talk about it. But yes, but I don't want this to get too far away, or we're going to forget that this isn't. It should be layout mode. We have to translate that. I have to go back and relearn everything I've forgotten. So the more often the better. Does anyone care about this? Because I was like, and then I saw this, and I'm like, yeah, we could have scripted that in FileMaker, but he does it. I think. Because Connect does all this other stuff. Because in FileMaker, you could easily build a table. But with Connect, you could have it it could send you a Slack message, or I don't know if you guys ever got the SMS going, but if Beverly Both gave us 5 stars and it was a Friday, then send a text message to Richard to let him know. Because Connect is not just about doing stuff in FileMaker or Studio, it's about all this other Dropbox integration, PayPal, QuickBooks.
People are agreeing that they would like Robert to return.
You've been upvoted. You're not voted off the island.
I was about to say, okay, I survived another week.
You survived another week.
I want my rose is what I'm looking for.
We have a question from Next Tech. We can see the signature.png files, but not attachments. Is there a way to get the URL of the bucket so we can insert from URL into a local FileMaker container?
If I followed that, the short answer is yes.
That was a warp drive jump right there. So they're talking about, because this is all in Mongo right now, but it could talk to the Connect flow could flow. I mean, some of this could be in FileMaker. It could push the data into FileMaker.
Yeah. So I don't have an example to show offhand, but there is a way that you can get data either from a container field. So when you've got a file hosted in a container field in FileMaker server or cloud, there's a URL effectively that is captured for that, and then you can create a file using Connect so that it's stored in our on our Studio side, and you can do that vice versa. So you can also take a file maybe you've captured as part of your data collection, a picture of the person's driver's license or something like that you need to capture as proof. That could then, using Connect, be transferred as a file that goes into a container field in FileMaker. So I hope that answered the question. If I was following it.
Next Tech, they're I think they're Las Vegas area, but they're Sharp, and that's another father-daughter team over there. All right, well, this has been exciting. I was marginally entertained, and then he started doing the Connect stuff, and it was like, wow, that was really great. Because Connect is starting to come along. I'm excited. I finally have functional AI that doesn't. Let's be clear, functional AI that doesn't suck. Functional Connect that doesn't suck. And the last piece of that is I got to find a killer use case for Studio, but it's coming along. It's really coming along. And Robert's here showing it to us, which is excellent. I love it. So, all right. Anyone else have any final comments before we call it a Friday?
Nope. Just universally agreeing that they definitely want you to come back. That got 6 upvotes in Discord. So
okay, good. All right.
And other people are saying they want to see you in general, and that this has been cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. All right, Margaret, we'll show your screen and roll the in credits.
Roll credits.
Beverly, feel free to be more active on the show.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one.